and preventing an increase in the interest rates. The House passed the bill before they went on a recess regarding this, and the Senate has a bill proposed by Democrats that would offset the cost of preventing an increase in the student loan rates with closing tax loopholes for the wealthy. And Republicans are
the House is coming back in now to consider a number of bills allowing the Capitol grounds to be used for several upcoming events. Live coverage on C-SPAN.
Recorded votes on postponed questions will be taken after 6:30 p.m. today. For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and adopt House Concurrent Resolution 105.
The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 105. Concurrent resolution authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for an event to celebrate the birthday of King Kamehameha.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Harper, and the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in support of House Concurrent Resolution 105, authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall on June 24th to celebrate the birthday of King Kamehameha, a legendary figure in Hawaiian history and culture. On June 11th, the people of Hawaii will celebrate the 96th annual Kamehameha Day, commemorating the life of Kamehameha the Great, who between 1795 and 1810 unified the islands into the Kingdom of Hawaii. Known for being a fierce warrior who fought for unity and independence, King Kamehameha was highly regarded for ruling with fairness and compassion. His law, known as the Law of the Splintered Paddle, specifically protected civilians in wartime and is today a model for human rights throughout the world. A statue of King Kamehameha graces the Capitol Visitor Center as part of the National Statuary Hall collection. In adopting the resolution, we will authorize the use of this space for the celebration of his life and accomplishments. I thank the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Mrs. Hanabusa, for introducing this concurrent resolution, and I urge my colleagues to support it. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, House Concurrent Resolution 105 is to ask for the use of the Emancipation Hall in the Visitor Center for the celebration on June 24, 2012. This will be the 43rd time that we have celebrated the birthday of King Kamehameha in the nation's capital. Speaker, Hawaii has a unique history. We are, of course, the 50th state, and we are the only state that comes with a kingdom as part of our history. June 11th is the recognized state holiday. King Kamehameha was born around 1758, and he unified the 8 Hawaiian islands by 1810. He is also known as King Kamehameha I. His birthday has been celebrated for about 140 years in my state, beginning in 1871 by his great-grandson, King Kamehameha V. The statue that you see in the Visitor Center today has also a fascinating history. It was commissioned by the Den Territory by Thomas Gould. Actually, we weren't quite a territory yet. It was still a kingdom. And he finished it in 1880. It was made in Italy. He was an American sculptor. The ship actually sank that was bringing the first Kamehameha statue to Hawaii. And in 1883, the second statue made its way to Hawaii. What stands in Emancipation Hall today is molded of the second statue. That is the official statue that stands in front of what we call Ali'iolani Hale, which is the home of the Hawaii Supreme Court. The first statue was discovered and stands in the Big Island, which is the birthplace of King Kamehameha. As you look at the statue, and I invite everyone to do that, You will see that it stands approximately 8.5 feet tall. He has a helmet and a feather cape, and they are made from very rare bird feathers. His left hand has a spear, and that was his statement that he was ready to defend his kingdom. But his right hand is open in a gesture, and that is to welcome people. And that is what we call the gesture of course, aloha. Lei draping is the customary celebration, which will also happen on June 24th here. And what you see there is a tradition that has become almost uniquely Hawaii's. Lei is the way that we bond, and the lei draping is symbolic of the bonds that people have in Hawaii, and it is a very close and strong bond. The act of presenting a lei is something that many identify with Hawaii as they come to visit our beautiful islands. As we all know, the President is born in Hawaii. And on June 20th, 2010, he issued Proclamation 8534 in honor of the bicentennial of the uniting of the islands by King Kamehameha. This is what the President had to say in that proclamation. On this bicentennial King Kamehameha Day, we celebrate the history and heritage of the Aloha State, which has immeasurably enriched our national life and culture. The Hawaiian narrative is one of both profound triumph and sadly deep injustice. It is the story of Native Hawaiians oppressed by crippling diseases, aborted treaties, and the eventual conquest of their sovereign kingdom. These grim milestones remind us of an unjust time in our history, as well as the many pitfalls of our nation's long and difficult journey to perfect itself. Yet, through the peaks and valleys of our American story, Hawaii's steadfast sense of community and mutual support shows the progress that results when we are united in a spirit of limitless possibility. This particular celebration is also very special for the people of Hawaii, and I believe for members of this House as well. Senator Daniel K. Akaka will be retiring at the end of his term, and as many of you are aware, he served 14 years in this House and the last 22 in the United States Senate. He is the epitome of aloha. He is the epitome of everything that is good about Hawaii. In honor of him, I'd like to read a portion of what he said in the June 2009 Kamehameha lei draping ceremony here, because I think he gave a different perspective of King Kamehameha that many of us do not know. He said, "As a military leader and statesman, Kamehameha was a brilliant visionary who pursued opportunities for progress. He pioneered military strategies that included unique flanking tactics and the use of cannons on the bow of his canoes. Those revolutionary concepts enabled Kamehameha to succeed in battle and are principles recognized and taught to this day at West Point. Beyond his military accolades, Kamehameha understood that if his people were going to thrive, they must be unified. Through governance, Kamehameha brought Native Hawaiians together and established an environment where they could perpetuate their heritage and way of life. Under his leadership, the government strengthened its autonomy and self-sufficiency. These actions set the kingdom's framework for international commerce and diplomacy that brought peace and prosperity to his people." As we all know, Senator Akaka is the only Native Hawaiian who serves in the Congress of the United States. It is very important for us to know that this person who became King Kamehameha was very thoughtful even in the days that he was uniting the Hawaiian Islands. He is known in Hawaii for the law of the splintered paddle, also called Kanawai Mamalahoi. What he basically said was that we have a responsibility to protect civilians at the time of war, and that every human life was precious, and it was wrong for the powerful to mistreat the weak. The context of this story is also very moving. Someone didn't know who he was and actually hit him on the head with a paddle, and of course it splintered. And the idea, when they found out that they had hit him, they all thought that their lives would come to an end. But instead, he decreed the law of the splintered paddle. This is the visionary who united the Hawaiian Islands. By this resolution, we honor this great person and also all that makes Hawaii special and unique. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Mississippi.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Hawaii.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes.
10. Okay.
Oh, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
The remainder of the 10 minutes to the gentleman from American Samoa.
The gentleman from American Samoa is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of House Concurrent Resolution 105 to authorize the use of the Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for the delayed raping ceremony on June 24th of this year to celebrate the birthday of the great warrior king, King Kamehameha. I want to thank my colleagues, Ms. Hanabusa and Ms. Hirono, for their leadership, and to all the members of the Hawaiian Congressional Delegation for their support in this important legislation. I also want to take this opportunity to commend my good friend, Senator Daniel Akaka, for his stewardship on this and many other issues befitting the people of Hawaii. Senator Akaka has been an integral part of the delayed raping ceremony for the past 36 years, and it is befitting that his outstanding service and dedication to the people of Hawaii will be recognized in next month's ceremony. Mr. Speaker, for more than 40 years, the Hawaiian Congressional Delegation and the Hawaii State Society in Washington, D.C. has hosted delayed raping ceremony on and about the second week of June to coincide with the celebration of King Kamehameha Day in the state of Hawaii. Because of the King Kamehameha statue has been moved to the Emancipation Hall of the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center, it now requires the enactment of a congressional resolution to authorize this annual celebration, hence House Concurrent Resolution 105 that is being considered before the House for today. Mr. Speaker, for some 2,000 years, the Hawaiian Islands existed under some tremendous rivalries among the warring chiefs among the native Hawaiians. After almost 10 years of fighting, King Kamehameha brought all of the Hawaiian Islands under one rule, thus fulfilling an ancient prophecy that one day a high chief will be born and will defeat the chiefs of the other islands and thereby bring all the islands, the 8 Hawaiian islands, under one rule. Mr. Speaker, King Kamehameha, while a mountain of a man, he was only about 6'8", 6 feet and 8 inches tall, weighed about 300 pounds, and a great warrior of many feats. Perhaps he is better known for his foresight and for the peace and stability he brought to the Hawaiian Islands. He was shrewd in building prosperity for his people by encouraging agricultural development and promoting commercial trade with the European countries and even with the United States. While he was open to new ideas, he was caught and circumspect the old ways. It was said that before the unification of the Hawaiian Islands in 1782, King Kamehameha, during a raid, came across 2 unarmed fishermen, and as he attempted to slay the fishermen for no reason, his foot was caught between the 2 rocks. By defending themselves, the 2 fishermen immediately hit King Kamehameha on the head with a large paddle and broke the paddle and left him for dead. King Kamehameha survived, and for some 12 years later, the fishermen were caught and brought before the king. Rather than seeking revenge on the fishermen, King Kamehameha set them free with gifts. From on then, King Kamehameha declared what is now known today in Hawaiian history as the law of the splintered paddle, or mamalahoi, as known among the Hawaiian people. The law of the splintered paddle, which has become the basis of many modern human rights laws regarding the treatment of unarmed men, women, and children, and they are not to be harmed when traveling along the roadside. In his time, King Kamehameha strived to maintain the sovereignty of his people. He created a unified legal system and did not allow non-Hawaiians to own their lands. These efforts came to the height of colonialism in the Pacific region when one after another Pacific island succumbed to the colonial powers. Mr. Speaker, I submit to you and to my colleagues and to the American people that the native Hawaiian, King Kamehameha, was one of the greatest warrior chiefs who have ever lived among the Polynesian people. For anyone who has ever visited the Hawaiian Islands, now probably as the 50th state of our nation, but just think that during the late 1700s, with a fleet of some 900 war canoes and with some 20,000 warriors, embarked upon one of the greatest feats in military history to unite the Hawaiian Islands under Kamehameha's rule, which took almost 10 years to achieve. And for some 100 years, King Kamehameha and his descendants ruled the Hawaiian Islands as an independent and sovereign nation. King Kamehameha indeed was a true warrior of the first order. He was a master of the ancient Hawaiian martial arts known to the Hawaiians as lua. We call it among Samoans as limalama. He fulfilled another prophecy whereby anyone who would move what was known as the naha stone, which weighed only 4,500 pounds, Kamehameha moved the stone, again with another prophecy that whoever was able to move the naha stone would rule the Hawaiian Islands. Kamehameha fulfilled that prophecy. Of interest also, Mr. Speaker, King Kamehameha's military tactics are still being studied at our West Point Military Academy in New York. In sports, he's one of a master surfer. In those days, his surfboards weighed over 100 pounds. Can you imagine a 6'8" surfing with a board that is about 100 pounds in weight? Another famous ancient Hawaiian sport was to jump off the high cliffs, just to jump in the ocean. But one of the sports that King Kamehameha was very famous for, specialized in, was the idea that 3 spears would be thrown at you. And what he would do was that he would let 2 spears pass you, then he would carry 2 spears, catch the other 2 spears, and parry the remaining 2 spears. Try that, Mr. Speaker, and see if you might be able to do this. The bottom line, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa, for her sponsorship of this legislation. Let's pass House Concurrent Resolution 105, and I thank my friend from Mississippi for his assistance in managing this bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I did not have any additional speakers, and I'm prepared to close. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers. However, I would like to, first of all, thank the gentleman from Mississippi for managing this legislation and bringing it to the fore, Speaker Boehner, Chairman Lundgren, Ranking Member Brady for allowing it to come forward as well, and the architects of the Capitol Police, and all others who will assist in this matter, and of course the people of Hawaii. Mr. Speaker, I hope that we'll pass this measure, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Concurrent Resolution 105? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The concurrent resolution is agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, we would request a recorded vote on this measure, please.
Gentlewoman request the yeas and nays?
Yes.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H. Con Res. 106.
The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 106, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of the Capitol grounds for the Greater Washington Soapbox Derby.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Herrera Butler, and the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H. Con Res. 106.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
All right. H. Con Res. 106 would authorize the use of the Capitol grounds for the Greater Washington Soapbox Derby on June 16th, 2012. And this event occurs annually on the Capitol grounds. The Soapbox Derby allows children to show off their dedication, hard work, and creativity as they compete for trophies. And as someone who's participated in derbies myself, Mr. Speaker, this is a good bill. The winners of each division are then qualified to compete in the National Soapbox Derby, and I'm excited to urge my colleagues to support passage of this resolution. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time. I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves the balance of her time. The gentlelady from Washington, D.C., Ms. Norton.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I'm delighted to support House Resolution 106, which authorizes use of the Capitol grounds for the Greater Washington Soapbox Derby, once again on June 16, 2012. I would also like to offer my appreciation to the majority and to acknowledge the efforts of Mr. Hoyer, who has been a consistent champion for his constituents in this event, and the entire delegation from this region who supports this event every year. On the date of the event, children and young adults from the Greater Washington area will race down Constitution Avenue to test their craftsmanship in hand-designed and constructed soapbox vehicles in the annual Soapbox Derby. Children between the ages of 8 and 17 will be competing for the opportunity to race in the National All-American Soapbox Derby, held every August in Akron, Ohio. Consistent with all events using the Capitol grounds, this event is open to the public and free of charge. The organizers will work with the Capitol Police and the architect of the Capitol to organize the details of the event. I strongly support Concurrent Resolution 106 and urge passage of this resolution. I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlelady reserves the balance of her time. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Well, I thought that was compelling, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very excited that we're going to hear next from a gentleman who has been a big champion of the Soapbox Derby for many moons now. And with that, I will continue to reserve my time.
The gentlelady continues to reserve the balance of her time. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to recognize now Mr. Hoyer for such time as he may consume.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I thank the representative of Washington, D.C. for yielding to me, and the distinguished lady, Ms. Norton. And I want to thank my friend, Congresswoman Herrera from Washington State, who chairs the subcommittee, and thank her very much for facilitating this coming to the floor, and thank her very much for her kind remarks as well. Mr. Speaker, pleased to call you Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of this resolution, which I am proud to sponsor, and I have sponsored for many, many years. This resolution allows the Greater Washington Soapbox Derby Association to hold its 71st annual Greater Washington Soapbox Derby on the Capitol grounds on June 16th. This is, I think, everybody who's been involved with Soapbox Derby knows, is a wonderful tradition that brings young people from around the area to the Capitol for a fun and educational event. It's taken place since 1958, when Norman Rocca won the inaugural race, besting 223 other contestants. as his soapbox racer crossed the finish line. That race has continued for over 70 years, and it has inspired thousands of the region's young people to learn the physics behind gravity racing and the engineering used to design soapbox racers. As a nation that wants to make things, as the Speaker knows, I have a Make It in America agenda that I keep trying to sell that is bipartisan. I think all of us agree that we want to make more things in America. If we're going to make more things in America and be able to export them, we're going to have to have people who make things. What a wonderful opportunity this is for young people to participate in making something that will then have them be successful, or in this sense, in the race, make it, win the race. So I think this is a wonderful enterprise. It brings young people together with their parents and teachers, and teaches sportsmanship, hard work, and pride of accomplishment. America's Soapbox Derbies have been called, and I quote, the greatest amateur racing event in the world. And we continue celebrating that tradition June 16th here in Washington. The spirit of competition that fuels these racers is the same spirit that has long energized our nation's entrepreneurs and innovators. The young people who participate in these derbies are often sponsored by groups from their communities who recognize in them great promise for the future. I continue to be incredibly proud of those from Maryland, 5th District, who participate, but indeed from the District of Columbia, Virginia, surrounding areas. We've celebrated a number of Soapbox Derby champions from the 5th District, including the winners from 2007, 2008, and 2009. Now, we broke our string, but maybe we'll get it back. But everybody's a winner. The winners in 2007 and 2008, Casey Rader and Courtney Rail, respectively, went on to win the national championship. I want to thank those members who have co-sponsored this resolution. My good friends from our area, not only Ms. Norton, who's been one of our leaders, but also Representative Jerry Connolly, Donna Edwards, Jim Moran, Chris Van Hollen, and Frank Wolf. And again, I thank my good and dear friend from Washington State for her leadership on this, and my colleague and fellow Washington area representative. We're a team on this, and I want to thank Mrs. Norton for her extraordinary leadership, not only of the District of Columbia, but of our region, and of so many important issues to this country, and I thank her for yielding. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington State is recognized.
I continue to reserve my time.
The gentlelady from Washington reserves her time. Gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
I appreciate, Mr. Speaker, the bipartisanship of this bill. To my good friend, the Minority Whip from Maryland, I can only say that the championship that your own district brought back is enough to make us think that our area teams might one day have a championship. We know this much: these students have to construct these soapboxes themselves. I mean, this is your STEM leaders still to come, the engineers of the future. I have no further speaker, and I appreciate all of the support of our good friends on the other side, and yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The gentlelady from Washington State is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support passage of this resolution, and with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Concurrent Resolution 106? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended and the concurrent resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4097.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 319, H.R. 4097, a bill to amend the John F. Kennedy Center Act to authorize appropriations for the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Micah, and the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, I'd ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 4097.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield with myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues. Today I'm pleased to stand before you and offer for consideration of the House H.R. 4097, which would reauthorize the John F. Kennedy Center through 2014. Everyone knows the Kennedy Center. It is one of the most outstanding national treasures that we have, cultural treasures in our capital city. And I'm pleased to be the sponsor of this, what I consider important legislation for several reasons. First of all, in Congress, we get to do some exciting things as chair of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Within our committee, we have 6 subcommittees, and one does oversee public buildings. And we've had a lot of public consternation, and rightfully so, with some of our public buildings programs under the General Services Administration. I think it was home last week. Everybody in America recalls the guy in the hot tub thumbing his nose at Congress and the taxpayers. And that's a bad example of behavior and wasteful expenditures of taxpayers' dollars. But I'm pleased to be here to say that there are many in government that do have programs that are very beneficial for the country, and one is the Kennedy Center. What an incredible institution. As the chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, I get to sit on their board of trustees, actually have gone to their meetings, and see how they operate. Most people don't know, but most of their programs are funded through private donations, not through public donations, although the building does stay under the responsibility of the federal government. A lot of folks don't know a lot about the history of the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center, and I learned this being on the board, was actually an idea of a Republican president. Dwight David Eisenhower in the 1950s was determined to create a national cultural center in our nation's capital. This center was the idea and the genesis of one of our presidents. Probably most people don't know that. I learned that in the rededication of the Eisenhower Theater within the Kennedy Center. After many years, it was renovated again, mostly through mostly through private funds and donations, and actually saw an old clip of President Eisenhower when he came up with a plan for a national cultural center. Subsequently after that, of course, we had the assassination of our beloved President Kennedy. And in 1964, they began work. In 1971, they actually opened the center and named it the Kennedy Center in honor of our late president. But a little bit about the history. I'm also excited about this proposal because this legislation authorizes one of the first additions I know of. I know we've done some repairs and some renovations, but we're actually talking about an addition to the Kennedy Center, and it's going to be funded with private money. Only private funds will be raised for this. So it's exciting to see a public-private partnership and the great leadership of the Kennedy Center. I have to pay a little bit of tribute to Michael Kaiser, the president. This guy works day and night to make everything happen at the Kennedy Center. And he, of course, reports to the board, and the chairman of the board is David Rubenstein. And he does a magnificent job corralling some of the leaders of our nation, those in business and free enterprise that come in and through their donations support the Kennedy Center. It's incredible Washington, D.C. programs, and it truly has made the nation's capital a center of a program for a whole host of cultural activities, dance and theater and symphonic music, and the list goes on and on. And many people across the nation get to see it in their own living rooms. They don't always get to come to our nation's capital, but we've seen those performances that are televised. So it is a rich part of our nation's capital and certainly a rich part of our nation's culture, which we are now seeing for the first time an addition. And this addition will support the center's educational mission, and that's very important to be of benefit, again, both for Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and for the nation and internationally. They have programs today. The purpose of the expansion is to provide improved facilities of the Kennedy Center by adding approximately 56,000 square feet of space for classrooms, rehearsal rooms, event spaces, and offices. And for the first time, they'll have a dedicated area for educational purposes, as I've outlined, other rehearsals and other functions and activities and things that don't fit into some of the theater and some of the existing facilities that they have already in the main building. So the expansion will permit the center to address its growing needs and provide greater accessibility for the center's programs and performances for the general public. So I'm pretty excited about this proposal. Most people don't know it. We worked some years, 15 years, on the visitor center. We also were raising funds, and part of the construction of that visitor center was raising funds privately. Most people wouldn't know that the author of the visitor center was Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, who made an agreement that half the funds would be raised privately for that visitor center here at the Capitol, and also some public funds. Of course, all that changed with September 11th, when the Capitol was attacked and our nation was attacked, and we had to make some dramatic changes in that whole funding and security issues that were raised there. But like the visitor center, we're raising funds. This is totally, again, the private sector that is building this facility, and great addition to the Kennedy Center. So with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. The Kennedy Center, a presidential memorial, is one of the nation's busiest arts facilities, presenting more than 2,000 performances annually and hosting thousands of theatergoers, visitors, and tourists. In fact, it is considered by many to be the greatest performing arts center in the world. The Kennedy Center also provides educational programs for both teachers and students, from pre-kindergarten through college across the United States. H.R. 4097 is a bipartisan bill that authorizes the Kennedy Center for a total of $36 million for fiscal years 2013 and 2014 for maintenance, repair, and capital projects only. These authorization levels are derived from the Kennedy Center's 2001 Comprehensive Building Plan, and the funding is being held flat for fiscal year 2013 and 2014. The bill also authorizes the Kennedy Center to construct a 100,000 square foot addition for educational programs using no federal funds and with the same restrictions on naming rights as the rest of the building. In addition to the Kennedy Center's responsibility to run a national program promoting the arts, it is first and foremost a presidential memorial, and we have a responsibility to fund its maintenance consistent with the dignity of a presidential memorial. This memorial remains a fitting tribute to President John F. Kennedy, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting H.R. 4097. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves her time. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I have no further speakers at this time and a reserve to close.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from what District of Columbia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a co-sponsor of this bill, but I am pleased to note that the Kennedy Center has gone very national, and it has taken not only its own programs nationally, but it aids arts programs throughout the United States. It raises its own funds, but of course, even if this weren't a presidential memorial, it is very hard to raise private funds for maintenance and repair of a memorial in Washington. So I think that the flat funding for 2013 and 14 is more than justified, and I'd like to commend President Michael Kaiser, yes, and the Board of Trustees once again on the art services, the cultural services they are bringing across the nation as well as to the nation's capital. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I thought I had done this, but I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 4097.
Without objection.
So the clerk has that. In closing, again, I think this is a very significant piece of legislation that does authorize the first addition that I know of to the Kennedy Center. Not only does it do that, it does it with the whole expansion being done with private funds, but we do have to authorize that. Again, the federal government is the custodian and trustee of the center. Also, I think this bill is brought forward in a fiscally responsible approach for maintaining the facility, and we authorize the capital repair and maintenance program for the Kennedy Center at the requested level and also in a reduction from current spending levels. So whether it's the cultural center of the nation, the Kennedy Center, and all other government programs, either partially funded like this or publicly funded, we've got to do more with less taxpayers' money in a responsible fashion. This legislation does that, and I'm pleased to offer it for consideration of the House. I yield back the balance of my time and urge my colleagues to support passage of this measure.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4097? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.Con. Res. 117.
The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 117, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of the Capitol grounds for the National Peace Officers Memorial Service.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Denham, and the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.Con. Res. 117.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
H.Con. Res. 117 would authorize the use of the Capitol grounds for the National Peace Officers Memorial Service on May 15, 2012. I'm pleased to be a sponsor of this important resolution. In 1962, May 15th was designated by President Kennedy as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week. The memorial service began in 1982 as a gathering in Senate Park of just 120 survivors and supporters of law enforcement. Today, National Police Week draws tens of thousands of law enforcement officials and their supporters from around the world who travel to the nation's capital to participate in events that honor our fallen officers. The National Peace Officers Memorial Service, which is sponsored by the Grand Lodge of the Fraternal Order of Police, is one in a series of events which includes the candlelight vigil and seminars. These important events help us to honor and remember the sacrifice of those members of law enforcement around our nation who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Back home in my district, we recently felt the pain of losing a respected member of law enforcement community, Deputy Robert Parrish. He was slain in the line of duty just a few weeks ago. He was the third sworn officer to be killed while serving with the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department. He was known in the community to volunteer for the dangerous work and had requested an assignment in the Civil Division. When any community loses an officer, it is a tragedy, both for the family and for those lives benefited from their service. Deputy Parrish is survived by his parents, Robert Sr. and Jane, sister Krista, brother Eric, and 2 children. By passing this legislation, we will be honoring Deputy Parrish and all those who came before him. I urge my colleagues to support passage of this resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentlewoman from the District of Columbia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
House Concurrent Resolution 117 authorizes use of the Capitol grounds for the 31st Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service on May 15th on the west front of the Capitol, a solemn and respectful public event in our nation's capital honoring our heroic law enforcement officers who were killed in the line of duty in 2011. According to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, last year 173 brave men and women were killed in the line of duty. Unfortunately, however, the number of officers killed in the line of duty increased 13% from 2010, with this year marking the first time in 14 years where more officers died from firearms-related incidents than from traffic-related incidents. Over 19,000 law enforcement officers have been killed while on duty since the first law enforcement death was recorded in 1791. The National Peace Officers Memorial Service is a fitting tribute to the 900,000 concurrent law enforcement officers and all federal, state, and local peace officers who give their lives in the daily work of protecting our families, our homes, and our workplaces. We honor these officers and their families on Capitol grounds for both their service and the ultimate sacrifice that some pay to maintain peace in communities across America. Consistent with all Capitol Hill events, the memorial service will be free and open to the public. I support the resolution and urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this tribute to our fallen peace officers. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm ready to close. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from District of Columbia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back the balance of her time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These important events help us to honor and remember the sacrifice of the members of law enforcement around our nation that have made this ultimate sacrifice, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Concurrent Resolution 117? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Mr. Speaker, I request...
The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
Thirds being in the affirmative. The nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H. Conres 118.
The clerk will report the title of the concurrent resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 118, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of the Capitol grounds for the District of Columbia Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Denham, and the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H-Con Res. 118.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
House H-Con Res. 118 would authorize the use of the Capitol grounds for the District of Columbia Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run that will be held on June 1st, 2012. As in years past, the torch run will be launched from the West Terrace of the U.S. Capitol and continue through the Capitol grounds as part of the journey to the 27th Annual D.C. Special Olympics Summer Games. The Special Olympics is an international organization dedicated to enriching the lives of children and adults with disabilities through athletics and competition. The law enforcement torch run began in 1981 when the police chief of Wichita, Kansas saw an urgent need to raise funds for and increase awareness of the Special Olympics. The torch run was then quickly adopted by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Today, the torch run is the largest grassroots effort that raises funds and awareness for the Special Olympics program. The event in D.C. is one of many law enforcement torch runs throughout the country and across 35 nations. I urge my colleagues to support passage of this resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this year marks the 27th Annual Law Enforcement Torch Run to benefit the District of Columbia Special Olympics. The torch relay event is a traditional event organized by law enforcement personnel for the D.C. Special Olympics, which takes place at Catholic University later this month. This event has become a popular event on Capitol Hill and is an integral part of the fundraising efforts for the D.C. Special Olympics, raising thousands of funds through their own sale of T-shirts. Torch Run participants will assemble at the U.S. Capitol building on June 1st, 2012 for opening ceremonies and then proceed to run or walk a 2.3-mile course to Fort McNair. Each year, approximately 2,500 Special Olympians compete in over a dozen events in the District of Columbia, and more than 1 million children and adults with special needs participate in Special Olympics worldwide. The goal of the competitions is to allow mentally challenged individuals to participate in events where they are accepted and respected. Confidence and self-esteem are the building blocks of the Special Olympic Games. Special Olympics of the District of Columbia have been operating for 43 years and providing services to a wide swath of D.C. residents. All programs offered for Special Olympics athletes are always free of charge. I am truly and personally pleased to support such a worthwhile organization, and I urge members of the House to support House Concurrent Resolution 118 as well. I reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlelady reserves her time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentlelady reserves the balance of her, yields back the remainder of her time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to House Concurrent Resolution 118? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the concurrent resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is...
Yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass Senate Bill 1302.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 1302, an act to authorize the Administrator of General Services to convey a parcel of real property in Tracy, California to the City of Tracy.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, and the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognize myself for such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 1302 would direct the General Services Administration to sell 150 acres of land in Tracy, California to the City of Tracy for not less than its appraised market value. The property is undeveloped land that was once under the custody and control of the federal government. However, the federal government retains no interest in the property and has no use or restrictions. Though 3 separate pieces of legislation enacted since 1999, Congress has conveyed the 150 acres to the City of Tracy and restricted its use of the land to educational and recreational uses only. Over the past decade, the City of Tracy has determined that these uses are no longer feasible and would like to utilize the land for an economic development, adding to its base and to the welfare of the citizens of Tracy. In fact, the city expects significant commercial interest in the property and is optimistic that future development on the land will create hundreds of much-needed jobs. Senate 1302 would remove all restrictions currently imposed on the property by Congress and would transfer complete ownership of the land to the federal government, from the federal government to the City of Tracy. Additionally, the legislation advances the goal of disposing of unneeded federal property, something that Mr. Denham, who's with me today, has been very active in. As we look at the Senate bill passed by the Senate unanimously in August of last year, I believe we see a win-win. The federal government takes a piece of land it has no further interest in and has, through congressional act in the past, locked it up for specific use not likely to occur, and we receive full market value, full fair market value for the property. This is the way federal land in excess should be disposed of, sold at fair market value or above, and assured to be put into good use by the recipient, in this case the City of Tracy. So I urge the support for this, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentlelady from the District of Columbia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I rise in support of this important legislation that would result in the efficient disposal of a parcel of federal real property to the City of Tracy, California. It's been outstanding for some years. The City of Tracy, with a population of 80,000, has been hard hit by economic recession. Unemployment in and around Tracy stood at 16.2% a year ago, a level far higher than the national average. The people of Tracy are looking for every available avenue to revive their economy and have found such a stimulus in the potential construction of a solar field. Congress can assist Tracy in its economic recovery by supporting S. 1302. That bill authorizes